The collision of two worlds. Some moments change everything. A glance across a crowded room. A decision made in the heat of desire. A morning that dawns with regret sharp enough to cut through steel. For Claire Bennett, that moment came wrapped in expensive sheets and the scent of cologne she would never forget. Claire had always been the steady one. At 27, she had built a life of careful choices and measured steps. Her auburn hair was always neatly twisted into a professional bun, her green eyes hidden behind sensible glasses, her wardrobe a collection of muted tones that whispered competence rather than confidence. She worked as a senior analyst at Bennett Media Solutions, a mid-sized advertising firm in Seattle, where predictability was her best friend and spontaneity was a stranger she never invited in. But that Friday night, everything shifted. Her colleague, Naomi Park, had dragged her to an art gallery opening in the downtown district. The space was filled with Seattle's creative elite, people who wore their success like armor and their ambition like perfume. Claire felt out of place immediately, nursing a glass of champagne she didn't really want while Naomi networked with the confidence of someone who belonged. That's when she saw him. He stood near a massive, abstract painting, tall and commanding without trying to be. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, strong jaw shadowed with stubble that suggested he'd been too busy to shave. He wore a simple black sweater and dark jeans, nothing ostentatious, but the way he carried himself spoke of quiet power. When his eyes met hers across the gallery, something electric passed between them. His name was Ethan Blackwood, though she wouldn't learn that until later. In that moment, he was simply the most magnetic man she'd ever encountered. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere but here," he said when he approached, his voice low and warm like whiskey. Claire laughed despite herself. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who feels the same way." His smile was crooked, genuine. "These events are exhausting. Everyone performing their success for everyone else." They talked for hours. Not about work or status or any of the usual getting-to-know-you questions. They talked about real things. He told her about growing up in a family that expected perfection, about the weight of living up to impossible standards. She told him about her father's death 3 years ago, about how she'd become the rock her mother leaned on, about the exhaustion of always being strong. When he suggested getting out of there, going somewhere quieter, Claire heard herself say yes before her rational mind could intervene. His apartment was in one of those sleek high-rises overlooking Elliott Bay, all floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist furniture that screamed money without shouting. But Claire barely noticed the luxury. She was too focused on the way he looked at her, like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. What happened next was a blur of sensation and surrender. Ethan touched her like she was precious, like every kiss was a discovery. He took his time, learning her body with a focus that made her feel worshipped. When he whispered against her skin, telling her she was beautiful, extraordinary, perfect, she believed him. For the first time in years, Claire felt fully alive. They made love twice that night, each time more intense than the last. Between rounds, they talked in the darkness, sharing secrets they'd never told anyone. He told her about his fear of failing, of never being enough no matter how much he achieved. She told him about the loneliness of always being the responsible one, of forgetting how to want things just for herself. When dawn crept through the windows, painting the city in shades of gold and pink, Claire woke to find herself alone in the massive bed. Panic hit her like a physical force. What had she done? She barely knew this man. She'd broken every rule she'd lived by, thrown caution aside for one night of reckless passion. She dressed quickly, fingers fumbling with zippers and buttons. Her silk underwear was nowhere to be found, probably kicked under furniture in their frenzy the night before. She could hear water running in what must be the master bathroom. Ethan was in the shower, and she had maybe 5 minutes to escape before facing the awkward morning-after conversation. Claire grabbed her purse and practically ran for the door. She told herself it was better this way, cleaner. No phone numbers exchanged. No promises made that neither of them would keep. Just one perfect night that would live in her memory forever. The elevator ride down felt like descending from a dream into harsh reality. By the time she reached the street, calling a rideshare with shaking hands, Claire had already begun constructing the walls around her heart again. It was a mistake, she told herself. A beautiful, unforgettable mistake that would never happen again. She spent the weekend in a fog, alternating between reliving every touch and trying to forget it ever happened. By Monday morning, she'd almost convinced herself it had been a fever dream, something that existed outside the boundaries of her real life. Then she walked into the office. The email had gone out Friday afternoon while she'd been getting ready for the gallery opening. Brennan Media Solutions had been acquired by Blackwood Enterprises, a media conglomerate known for aggressive expansion and ruthless efficiency. Their new CEO would be introducing himself Monday morning in a mandatory all-staff meeting. Claire filed into the conference room with her colleagues, finding a spot near the back where she could observe without being noticed. The energy in the room was anxious, uncertain. Acquisitions usually meant layoffs, restructuring, lives turned upside down. When Ethan Blackwood walked through the door, Claire felt the world tilt sideways. He looked different in the harsh fluorescent light of the conference room, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that transformed him from the vulnerable man she'd known into something harder, more intimidating. But it was definitely him. Same strong jaw, same dark eyes, same presence that commanded attention without demanding it. "Good morning," he said, his voice carrying easily through the silent room. "I'm Ethan Blackwood, and I'm looking forward to leading this company into its next chapter." His eyes swept the room, professional and assessing. When they landed on Claire, she watched recognition dawn on his face. His practiced smile faltered for just a fraction of a second, but it was enough. He knew, he remembered, and judging by the flash of something heated in his gaze, he remembered everything. Claire felt her face burn as his eyes held hers for a beat too long before moving on. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This couldn't be happening. The universe couldn't be this cruel. But it was. And as Ethan continued his introduction, outlining his vision for the company with the confidence of someone born to lead, Claire realized with growing horror that her one night of reckless abandon was about to become her everyday nightmare. The meeting concluded with Ethan announcing individual sessions with key personnel throughout the week. "I want to understand each department's strengths and challenges," he said. "My assistant will be scheduling meetings. I look forward to getting to know all of you better." His eyes found Claire's again, and this time there was no mistaking the intent in his gaze. He wasn't just going to let this go. Whatever had happened between them, whatever she'd felt and run from, was far from over. As her colleagues filed out, buzzing with speculation about the new boss, Claire remained frozen in her seat. Naomi touched her shoulder. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." If only it were that simple, Claire thought. Ghosts didn't walk into your office and turn your carefully constructed life upside down. Ghosts didn't look at you with eyes that remembered every secret you'd whispered in the dark. "I'm fine," she lied, gathering her things with trembling hands. But as she walked back to her desk, feeling Ethan's gaze follow her retreat, Claire knew nothing would ever be fine again. The unraveling. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Claire's desk as she stared blankly at her computer screen. The numbers and charts that usually made perfect sense now swam before her eyes, meaningless and distant. She'd reread the same email 3 times without absorbing a single word. Claire Bennett to the executive suite. "Claire Bennett, please report to the executive suite immediately." The announcement over the intercom made her blood run cold. Around her, colleagues looked up with mixture of curiosity and sympathy. Being summoned to the executive floor on day 1 of new leadership was never a good sign. Naomi rolled her chair closer, lowering her voice. "Want me to come with you? Moral support?" Claire shook her head, forcing a smile she didn't feel. "I'll be fine. Probably just wants to discuss the Henderson campaign since I'm lead on that account." But as she rode the elevator to the top floor, smoothing down her gray pencil skirt with clammy palms, Claire knew this had nothing to do with client campaigns. This was about Saturday night. About the way she'd fled without explanation. About the silk underwear she'd left behind like some twisted Cinderella story. The executive suite was all gleaming wood and leather, the kind of space designed to intimidate. Ethan's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia, gestured toward the closed door of the corner office. "Mr. Blackwood is expecting you. Go right in." Claire knocked softly, her knuckles barely making a sound. "Come in, Claire." The way he said her name, familiar and intimate, sent shivers down her spine. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her with a soft click that felt like sealing her fate. Ethan stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, hands in his pockets, silhouetted against the Seattle skyline. He didn't turn around immediately, and the silence stretched between them like a living thing. "You ran," he said finally, his voice quiet but edged with something sharp. I woke up and you were gone. No note, no explanation. Just gone, Claire swallowed hard. I thought it would be easier that way. Easier for who? Now he turned to face her, and the raw emotion in his eyes nearly undid her. I spent the entire weekend trying to find you. Do you have any idea how many art galleries I called, trying to figure out who organized that opening? How many hours I spent searching social media for women named Claire in Seattle? You shouldn't have done that. Why? Because it was just a one-night stand to you? Because I was just some convenient distraction? His voice rose slightly before he caught himself, running a hand through his hair in frustration. Or was it because you felt what I felt and it scared you? The accusation hung in the air between them. Claire wanted to deny it, to maintain the walls she'd spent years building. But standing here looking into those dark eyes that had seen her at her most vulnerable, she couldn't lie. It terrified me, she whispered. One night with you and I felt more alive than I have in years. That kind of feeling, that kind of intensity, it's dangerous. People like me don't get to have dangerous. We have responsibilities, obligations, mothers depending on us. Ethan moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, that same scent that had haunted her dreams all weekend. People like you? Ordinary people. People who work regular jobs and worry about mortgage payments and whether they can afford to visit home for the holidays. People who can't risk everything on a feeling. And you think I'm not ordinary? Ethan's laugh was bitter. Claire, I bought this company because of you. The words didn't register at first. When they did, Claire felt her knees go weak. What? I tracked down where you worked. Found out Brennan Media was looking for an investor to expand. So I didn't just invest. I bought the whole company. He stepped back, spreading his hands. $32 million to find the woman who disappeared from my bed. Tell me that's ordinary. Claire's mind reeled. $32 million. He'd spent $32 million to find her. The number was so absurd, so impossibly extravagant that she almost laughed. Almost. That's insane, she managed. That's completely insane. Probably, Ethan agreed. But I've never been accused of doing things halfway. When I want something, when I know something is right, I go after it with everything I have. This isn't right, though. Don't you see? You're my boss now. Anything between us is inappropriate, unethical. I could lose my job, my reputation, everything I've worked for. Then quit. The casual suggestion made Claire's jaw drop. Quit? Just walk away from 3 years of building my career here? Walk away from a salary that supports my mother? You really don't understand what it's like for normal people, do you? Ethan flinched as if she'd struck him. You're right. I grew up with money, with privilege. I've never had to worry about medical bills or whether I could afford groceries. But don't mistake that for not understanding loss, Claire. Don't think that just because I have money, I don't know what it's like to feel empty. The vulnerability in his voice cracked something in Claire's chest. She remembered their conversations in the dark, the way he'd told her about his mother's death when he was 12, about growing up with a father who measured love in stock portfolios and business acquisitions. I can't do this, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. We can't do this, or why not? Ethan moved closer again, and this time Claire didn't step back. Give me one good reason that isn't about what other people think or what you're supposed to do. Because you'll hurt me. The words escaped before she could stop them, raw and honest. Because if I let myself feel what I felt Saturday night again, if I let you in, and then you leave or get bored or realize I'm not worth the trouble, it will destroy me. Ethan's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. And if I told you I'm already in? That I've been in since the moment you told me about your father, about how you still set a place for him at Thanksgiving out of habit, that I fell for you somewhere between your stories about childhood summers in Spokane and the way you laugh when you're nervous? Claire's breath caught. She wanted to pull away to protect herself, but his touch was melting her defenses like snow in sunlight. I have a proposition, Ethan said softly. Have dinner with me tonight. Not as your boss, not as some billionaire, just as Ethan. The man you trusted with your secrets. Give me one chance to show you this could work. And if I say no, then I respect that. Your job is secure either way, I promise you that. But I'm asking you to be brave, Claire. Be as brave as you were when you said yes to coming home with me. Be as brave as the woman who told me her deepest fears while lying in my arms. Claire closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of his hand against her skin. Every logical part of her brain screamed danger, warned her of all the ways this could go wrong. But her heart, that treacherous organ she'd kept locked away for so long, was singing a different tune. "One dinner," she heard herself say, "but we set boundaries. Clear, firm boundaries about work and personal life." Ethan's smile was radiant. "Whatever you need. And you can't buy any more companies to impress me. That's going to severely limit my romantic gestures, but I'll manage." Despite everything, Claire felt herself smile. "This is a terrible idea." "The best ones usually are," Ethan said, echoing words she'd once told herself. 7 o'clock. I'll pick you up." As Claire left his office, her heart hammering and her mind spinning, she caught sight of her reflection in the elevator's mirrored walls. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes bright in a way they hadn't been in years. She looked alive, terrified but alive. Naomi was waiting at her desk when she returned, practically vibrating with curiosity. "Well, are you fired? Promoted? What happened up there?" Claire sank into her chair, still processing everything. "I have a dinner date." "A what?" "With our new CEO, tonight at 7. Naomi's eyes went wide. "Claire Bennett, are you telling me you're going on a date with Ethan Blackwood?" "The Ethan Blackwood? The man who's worth more than some small countries?" "I don't know what I'm doing," Claire admitted, dropping her head into her hands. "I think I might be losing my mind." "Or maybe," Naomi said gently, squeezing her shoulder, "you're finally finding it." A truth we choose. The restaurant Ethan chose was nothing like Claire expected. Instead of some exclusive establishment requiring reservations months in advance, he took her to a small Italian place in the Capitol Hill neighborhood, the kind of family-owned spot where the owner greeted regular customers by name, and the scent of garlic and fresh basil filled the air like a warm embrace. "This is my favorite place in Seattle," Ethan explained as they settled into a corner booth with red checkered tablecloths. "My mother used to take me to a place just like this in Boston before she died. Same red sauce recipe, same terrible oil paintings of Venice on the walls. It reminds me that not everything valuable comes with a price tag." Claire felt something in her chest soften. This wasn't the billionaire CEO. This was just Ethan, the man who'd held her while she cried about her father, who'd listened without judgment when she'd confessed her fears about never being good enough. "Tell me about her," Claire said softly. "Your mother. You mentioned her Saturday night, but we didn't really talk about it." Ethan's expression grew distant, touched with old grief. "She was a teacher. Elementary school. She used to say that every child was a universe waiting to be discovered. My father thought her job was beneath her, that she should be hosting charity galas and serving on museum boards. But she loved those kids. Loved teaching them to read, to question, to dream. She sounds wonderful." She was. "And when she got sick, when the cancer took her piece by piece over 18 months, my father threw money at the problem. The best doctors, experimental treatments, specialists flown in from around the world. But none of it mattered. Money couldn't save her." Ethan's jaw tightened. "That's when I learned that for all my father's power and wealth, there are some things you simply can't buy." Claire reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. "Is that why you work so hard? To prove you're different from him?" "Maybe. Or maybe to prove I'm worthy of the empire he built. Some days I'm not sure which." He turned his hand over, threading his fingers through hers. "But when I'm with you, I don't feel like I have to prove anything. I can just be Ethan. Not the CEO, not the heir, just me." The waiter arrived with their food, breaking the intensity of the moment. As they ate pasta that tasted like someone's grandmother had poured love into every bite, their conversation flowed easily. They talked about books and movies, about Claire's college years studying marketing, about Ethan's brief attempt at architecture before his father had demanded he get a business degree instead. "Do you ever regret it?" Claire asked. "Not pursuing what you really wanted?" Ethan considered the question carefully. "I used to, but now I think maybe there's no such thing as the wrong path, just different versions of yourself that could have been. The question is whether you're brave enough to become the person you want to be, even if it means disappointing people's expectations." The words struck something deep in Claire. How many years had she spent living up to everyone else's expectations, being the responsible daughter, the dedicated employee, the friend who always said yes even when she wanted to say no? When had she last asked herself what she actually wanted? "What are you thinking?" Ethan asked, studying her face with that intense focus that made her feel like the only person in the world. That I've spent so long being afraid of making mistakes, that I've forgotten how to take chances, that maybe running from your apartment Saturday morning was just another way of playing it safe. And now, Claire took a deep breath, feeling like she was standing on the edge of something vast and terrifying and wonderful. Now I think maybe safe is overrated. After dinner, instead of taking her home, Ethan suggested a walk along the waterfront. The October air was crisp with the promise of autumn, and the city lights reflected off the dark water of Puget Sound like scattered stars. Claire had walked this path 100 times, but tonight it felt different, charged with possibility. "I need to be honest with you about something," Ethan said as they paused near a bench overlooking the water. "About work, about us, about how this will look to other people." Claire's stomach tightened. Here it came. The reality check. The explanation of why this couldn't actually work. "There will be talk," Ethan continued. "People will say you're sleeping your way to the top or that I'm abusing my position. HR will have concerns. Your colleagues might treat you differently. This won't be easy. I know, but I don't care." Ethan turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "I don't care what people say or think because I know the truth. You earned your position long before I showed up. You're brilliant at your job and everyone at that company knows it. And what's between us, what started Saturday night? That has nothing to do with business and everything to do with two people who found something rare." Claire felt tears prick her eyes. "You make it sound so simple. It can be, if we're both brave enough." Ethan stepped closer, his hands moving to frame her face. "I'm not asking you to have all the answers right now. I'm just asking you to give this a chance. Give us a chance. What if it doesn't work? What if we try and fail and everything falls apart? Then at least we tried. At least we didn't spend the rest of our lives wondering what if." His thumb traced her lower lip, sending shivers through her body. "Claire, I've built a career on calculated risks, on analyzing data and making strategic decisions. But this isn't about calculation. This is about knowing deep in my bones that you're worth any risk." When he kissed her, it was different from Saturday night. Less desperate, more deliberate. A promise rather than a question. Claire melted into him, her arms winding around his neck as she kissed him back with all the pent-up longing and fear and hope tangled in her chest. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "Come home with me. Not for what you're thinking, just to talk more, to figure this out together." Claire nodded beyond words. This time when they arrived at his apartment, there was no frantic rush to undress, no desperate need to fill silence with sensation. Instead, they sat on his couch, her feet tucked under her and his arm around her shoulders, and they talked until the sky began to lighten with dawn. They talked about logistics, about how to maintain professionalism at work while exploring their connection outside of it. They agreed to keep their relationship private for now. Not out of shame, but to protect Claire from gossip and speculation. Ethan promised to recuse himself from any decisions about her employment, to make sure she was evaluated fairly by other members of leadership. But more importantly, they talked about their hopes and fears. Claire told him about the pressure of being her mother's sole support, about the guilt she carried for leaving home, about her dream of someday starting her own consulting firm. Ethan shared his struggle with living up to his father's legacy, his fear of becoming the kind of man who measured worth in profit margins, his desire to build something that mattered beyond quarterly earnings reports. As morning light flooded the apartment, painting everything in shades of gold, Claire realized something had shifted inside her. The fear was still there, but it was quieter now, overshadowed by something brighter and more powerful. "I should get home," she said reluctantly. "Change clothes before work. People will definitely talk if I show up in yesterday's outfit." Ethan smiled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I'll drive you." "But Claire, there's one more thing I need to tell you." Her heart stuttered. "What?" "Saturday night when you left, you forgot something." He stood, moving to his bedroom and returning with a small silk bundle. "Her underwear. I kept them because they smelled like you, because they were the only proof I had that you were real and not some dream. But I think it's time I returned them." Claire took the fabric, her cheeks burning. "You carried these around all weekend?" "In my pocket. Like a lovesick teenager." Ethan's grin was sheepish. "My assistant probably thinks I've lost my mind." Despite everything, Claire laughed. It started as a giggle but grew into full, honest laughter that shook her whole body, and Ethan joined in, the two of them laughing together as the city woke up around them. 3 months later, Claire stood in front of Brennan Media's leadership team, presenting the Henderson campaign results. The campaign had exceeded every metric, bringing in revenue that surpassed their most optimistic projections. As she fielded questions and accepted congratulations, she caught Ethan's eye across the conference table. His expression was professionally neutral, but there was pride and warmth in his gaze that made her heart soar. After the meeting, her direct supervisor, Richard Chen, pulled her aside. "Outstanding work, Claire. Based on these results and your consistent performance, we're promoting you to Senior Director of Client Strategy. You've earned this." Claire felt tears prick her eyes. She'd earned it. Not because she was dating the CEO, but because she'd worked her tail off and delivered exceptional results. Later that evening, she called her mother from Ethan's apartment where she'd been spending more and more of her nights. "Mom, I got promoted today." Her mother's delighted squeal made her smile. "Oh, honey, your father would be so proud." "I'm so proud. There's something else I need to tell you." Claire took a deep breath, feeling Ethan's supportive hand on her shoulder. "I've been seeing someone. It's serious, and I think you should meet him. Is he good to you?" Claire thought about the way Ethan had helped her create a budget to pay off her mother's medical debt. The way he'd held her when she cried on the anniversary of her father's death. The way he pushed her to pursue her dreams even when they scared her. The way he loved her, not for who she was supposed to be, but for who she actually was. "He's everything I didn't know I needed," Claire said softly. "Then I can't wait to meet him." After she hung up, Ethan pulled her into his arms. "Ready for the interrogation? I should warn you, mothers generally find me charming." "Arrogant much?" "Confident," he corrected with a kiss. "There's a difference." Claire looked around the apartment that had become almost as familiar as her own. At the photos they'd added to the mantle, capturing moments from the past 3 months. Their weekend trip to the San Juan Islands. The charity gala where they'd gone public with their relationship. The quiet Sunday morning spent reading the paper and drinking coffee in comfortable silence. This wasn't the life she'd planned. It was better. Messier, more complicated, infinitely richer. She'd learned that sometimes the biggest mistakes lead to the greatest adventures. That running toward fear instead of away from it can lead to the most extraordinary places. That love, real love, wasn't about perfection or timing or having all the answers. It was about finding someone who saw you completely and chose you anyway. "I love you," she said, the words coming easily now, though the first time she'd said them, her voice had shaken with vulnerability. "I love you too," Ethan replied, pulling her closer. "My beautiful, brave, brilliant Claire who left her underwear in my apartment and changed my entire life." She swatted his chest playfully. "Are you ever going to let me live that down?" "Never. It's my favorite story. The night I met the woman who taught me that some things are worth any risk." As they stood there in the fading light, Claire thought about the version of herself who'd walked into that gallery 3 months ago. The woman who'd been so afraid of living that she'd almost missed out on everything that mattered. She was grateful to that Claire for being brave enough to say yes, for taking that first terrifying step into the unknown. Because on the other side of fear, she'd found something she never expected. Herself. Not the version she thought she should be, but the woman she actually was. Flawed and fierce, scared and strong. Capable of more love and courage than she'd ever imagined. And standing beside her, holding her hand as they faced an uncertain future together, was the man who'd shown her that sometimes the best things in life come wrapped in risk, that the biggest rewards require the greatest leaps of faith, that love, when you're brave enough to reach for it, can transform everything. The story of how she'd ended up in her billionaire boss's arms started with a mistake. But it became something else entirely, a testament to the beautiful, messy, miraculous things that happen when you stop playing it safe and start living your truth.